I'm Lester Holt.
All right, no new Dateline this week, so we decided to go back and pick some of our favorite eps. When we do this, we call it From the Vault.
I coined that.
Yep, that was Kate's call. TM. Why don't you go ahead and tell us why you picked this episode?
On several different lists, it was ranked as top 10 of all time. I actually think, well, maybe this is a controversial opinion. This episode, I guess, is ranked so high because it's so crazy, but it's pretty straightforward. You know right from the beginning that the guy did it. There's no twists.
I agree with that, but it's also very much one of my favorite genres of true crime, which is when you have a husband who has the hubris to get away with killing his first wife and to think he can get away with it again, right? Like, this is definitely something you see a lot. Like Staircase, for instance. I think he's innocent, though.
I think he's innocent, too. I'm all about the owl theory.
Same here! I'm also about the owl theory.
I love it.
She reached up, and all of a sudden she is entangled with this wild bird of prey.
This is season 24, episode 30, A Deadly Path, which IMDB describes as, when a woman falls to her death while hiking with her husband in Rocky Mountain National Park, rangers question if her death was an accident or a heinous act of violence. So this episode opens up with this little girl named Anna Kate.
I'm 9 years old.
And I don't know, how'd you feel about this little girl? I mean, I like that they mixed it up. You know, they didn't hit us with a, if only she hadn't died.
If she'd only stayed in the water a little longer.
I like that.
Her letters to her aunt were not subtle.
No.
It was, Aunt Tony, you're dead. I love you.
Yeah. How's heaven? I have homework.
Yeah. A for effort, though.
Anna Kate once had an aunt named Tony.
This episode didn't have the usual weird voiceover describing our victim. In this one, Tony's brother told a story, and apparently she didn't know how to cook chicken.
Well, Mississippi's the place to be for that.
Mississippi and every southern lady ought to be able to cook some fried chicken.
But according to him, she didn't know that you had to thaw it first.
Yeah, I felt like they ended the story too soon there.
He was making her sound kind of dumb.
Little did she know that, when you took it out of the freezer, you'd have to let it thaw.
Which sucks, because she's a doctor.
Yeah, you're right. So she is smart. You're right.
Yeah.
But AC, Andrea Canning, of course, another all-star. Gotta have an all-star and an all-star app.
Tonight, Andrea Canning.
And AC is very special to you, Kurt.
Well, yeah, because she's a beauty and a talent, and I wish we were buds. Is that what you mean?
You wish you were buds?
Sexual buds.
There we go.
Yeah. But just like when she was talking about sugary snacks and stuff, I bet she goes in there going, okay, give me a cute little anecdote about your sis.
Yeah.
Frozen fried chicken aside, Tony was someone who set goals and made them happen.
So she's a good old Southern girl, and she wants to find a good Christian man.
And where was she looking, Kurt? On a Christian dating site.
Mistake number one.
What Christian dating site do you think it was?
I don't know. The fish one, Plenty of Fish? Maybe?
Not a Christian site.
Is that for Jewish people?
No.
Wait, it's a religious dating site, though. That's correct.
I don't believe that it is.
Plenty of Fish? Oh, I'll bet money it is. I'm going to do a quick Goog. Plenty of Fish. Here we go.
What makes you think that would be a Christian site?
Because Jesus was a fisherman or whatever. He's making fish for everybody. Remember that story?
I don't remember that Bible story, actually.
Come on, he turned water into wine and he made bread into fish or something. I don't know. But you would appear to be correct. It just says the most welcoming way to date. All right. Well, I stand corrected.
Anyway, Tony's good Christian values led her straight into the arms of a murderer.
His name was Harold Henthorn.
When Tony meets Harold, he tells her that his job is planner.
Said he was a planner.
That's like the Barbie meme. Ken's job is beach. Harold's job is plan. He doesn't give any details about what he's doing, vaguely says that it's something with nonprofits, but all he tells people is planner. And planning, he did.
Yeah.
He planned a murder. Several of them, it turns out.
Bingo.
The future was bright.
One of the first things that they talk about, that they hit it off, they've got this formula.
They had come up with a system, and it was 5 C's.
If they meet these 5 C words, then it means that they're like compatible. And one of the C's was for compatible. One of them was for chemistry. Oh, Christianity, of course.
I've heard worse things from people about what they're looking for in love than wordplay.
They matched on 4 of the 5, and then AC goes,
So when they met, it was combustion.
I thought that was pretty good.
Very clever from your girl.
Yeah.
Tony ticked off her C's.
Tony wanted to be married so bad that she ignored clear red flags from this guy.
Within a year, they were married.
But they didn't live together right away.
And so they did long distance for 2 years. years, and that eventually she moved to him. When it's like, he could be planning stuff wherever he wants. He could plan this murder in Mississippi if he wanted to.
Yeah.
But he makes her move, leave her practice, and start a new life in Denver.
Also a red flag.
But what does old Tony do? She does it, and she flourishes.
Yeah.
Like, she's got a great practice. People love her. Great bedside manner.
She's a badass. She can make it work anywhere.
She was a beloved doctor. She had a really great bedside manner.
They do have a child. As soon as their daughter is born, Harold takes over that as well.
Yeah, Harold is he won't let her be a mom.
He's got to be the mom and the dad.
It was pretty clear Harold was Mr. Mom.
So much so that Tony feels like she has no say. It's his house, his rules.
She said, well, I've just learned long ago. It's just better to let Harold be right.
To the point where she stays late after work when everyone is gone, sitting alone in her office, playing solitaire, rather than go home.
How miserable must it be at home if this woman who's wanted a child her whole life has it now and is sitting at her office playing solitaire in the dark? It must have been hell.
It's tragic.
We would be done, patients gone, staff gone, and she would still be on her computer playing games.
And I did like how they showed her computer playing solitaire.
Without her.
With an empty chair, like Ghost Tony. Oh, and actually, Tammy, the lady that worked at the office, she was not crazy about Harold, and she said so to Tony.
No, Tammy felt like whenever Harold would show up to the office, he'd act like it was his. Tammy wasn't feeling that. However, she did help Harold schedule a surprise anniversary getaway for Tony. So how do you think Tammy feels about helping facilitate the scheduling of Tony's death?
Not good.
He phoned and said, hey, Tammy, I want to surprise Tony for our anniversary. Can you help me out?
But I wonder early in the investigation if the cops interrogated Tammy as if she was in on it. Like her and Harold were having an affair and Tammy did this on his behalf. Like that kind of happens all the time on Dateline.
So you're being really sneaky in all of this.
I am.
Surprise anniversary trip is another red flag. He packed her bag, cleared her schedule, made it so it was basically impossible for her to say no. That is my nightmare. I'm not spontaneous. And if I am feeling spontaneous, I need to be the one to pack my bag. Otherwise, I'm going to end up hiking a mountain in jeans, which is what they did.
Yeah.
But Harold, he do be planning things.
Harold, the planner, was ready.
What a nightmare it would be to have to trust what your husband picked out for you to wear for 3 days. I mean, no.
Awful.
No way.
He's not going to get the underwear right. He's not going to get the toiletries correct.
I wouldn't want that pressure, for one. I don't like to plan. So I'm an anti-Harold. I also don't like murdering.
You know, that's one of the things I like about you, Kurt. You don't murder people.
I sure don't. So he plans this getaway, and she's led into a back office like she has a patient. And guess what? Surprise, surprise, it's Harold.
Picks up a chart, walks into the room like she normally would, and then there's her husband.
So he plans this getaway to a ski resort.
Harold booked a room at the Stanley,
Which AC is quick to point out.
famous for inspiring Stephen King's The Shining.
I don't think that's true. I feel like I hear all the time about a different hotel that inspired The Shining. I also thought there was this house in Maine that Stephen King stayed at that inspired The Shining, that he actually wrote it there. So I don't know how all these different hotels can claim that.
I thought it was a hotel at Mount Hood. Yeah, I don't buy it. But I'll tell you what the Stanley Hotel can claim, and that is that it was the location for the shooting of the masterpiece, Dumb and Dumber.
No way.
You remember that scene when he's handing out tips to the concierge and stuff, and he's going, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Thank you, sir. There you go.
Great scene. And they also shot the bar at that hotel when he says we landed on the moon.
Landed on the moon!
Doesn't that feel like bigger bragging rights than The Shining?
Yeah, because they really shot it there.
Right.
I don't know. I wasn't really paying attention.
They check in, but they don't stick around because he's got this hike planned.
So, this hike was a mess. First of all, don't start your long hike in the late afternoon. You need to start that in the morning. But they did not.
They start in late afternoon and they go on like way out of the way hiking paths for hours. And Harold claims that the hiking paths were too crowded, so they went off path, which I call bullshit on because
it's too late in the day.
Yeah.
No one is going to be that far into the trail that late.
They bring the meal along and they finally get to this beautiful view. And like it is beautiful, but as AC points out,
it's the same view all along the trail. There's no
Yeah.
lookout that's any more or less spectacular than the one before it.
Yeah, and what's wild is they went to a certain height, which is really high, and then the view that they landed on, like where Harold said was the perfect spot, was below that spot.
It wasn't about the view. It was about the perfect place to push your wife off a ledge.
Which is what he does.
They do make a note of telling us that the leading cause of death in national parks is falling.
About 150 people die in national parks each year.
But don't let that deter you. Get out there and explore our beautiful national parks.
Nah, I'm good.
Only you can prevent forest fires.
The ledge is empty. She must have fallen. And he claims she was trying to get a picture of wild turkey.
Do turkeys fly?
Oh my God, I have no idea.
What are they doing up there?
Yeah, you're right. Do they're not hiking their little legs going up that hill? That's not happening.
I mean, it would make sense if they were eagles. Why not just say eagles?
I didn't even consider he meant the wild turkeys were flying. I thought they were just like gobbling around their feet.
But she wouldn't need to look out at the vista to get a shot of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's complete bull is what it is. Because then also he changes his story later and says that she was trying to take a picture of him.
She successfully did that.
Yep.
The last photo taken is of him posing, hanging on for dear life on the edge of that cliff with his psycho eyes.
I bet he's sitting there holding on to that tree going, okay, stand here like this. And then as soon as she walks out there and then boom, he pushes her off.
Yep.
But soon, sorrow would be coupled with suspicion.
He claims it took a really long time to get down to her, and that's why there was an hour between the time that last photo was taken and when he made his first 911 call.
Yeah, which is wild because when AC goes up there later, it takes her a couple of minutes to get from the push spot to the landing spot.
This is not an easy descent.
I loved that AC made the trek up this hill, by the way.
Dateline retraced Harold and Tony's path.
She wanted to see for herself.
She goes up there. They have this great guide that goes with them.
This path is way out of the way.
Straight out of like the South Park ski episodes.
Gonna have a bad time.
Where he's like, absolutely not. It's not a good idea.
Would you recommend somebody who's not an expert hiker come down here?
Definitely not.
And it's worth noting that South Park does take place in Colorado.
You're right. Maybe it's based on this dude.
What about a woman in her 50s with bad knees?
Absolutely not.
I loved AC up on the hill with her little pink vest.
I bet you like that pink vest.
I sure did.
Do you wish that you were that puffy vest?
I wish I was that puffy vest. I thought it looked great. And I love that you could tell it must have gotten chilly because later she's in a full jacket. So she came prepared. And I bet her husband didn't pack her bags. I'll tell you that.
911, what's the address, the emergency?
I did an Alpine mountain rescue team immediately.
What did you think of this 911 call?
He sounded frantic enough. We also get a sense of his controlling behavior when he's trying to tell the 911 operators what to do.
Here's the thing, I will pay any and all expenses for a helicopter. I don't care if it's private, I don't care if it's commercial, I'll pay any and all expenses right now.
He's like just trying to plan the rescue.
But what he's really doing is planning his alibi, because I guarantee he knew exactly how high up they were. When she said, our helicopters can't reach you, like he knew that answer was coming, which is probably why he offered to pay for it. Like he knew ahead of time that the answer to that was no, you're too high.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's why they're at this spot.
Yeah.
And also he refuses to stay on the line. Keeps saying, oh, my battery's going to die. My battery's going to die. Text me.
Can you hang on 1 second for me? I'll check back. Okay, good. Text. My battery's really low. Okay, Sean. Okay, Harold.
But he calls a bunch of other people and texts a bunch of other people, not conserving his battery.
Yeah.
Harold made or received 22 calls and 98 text messages.
I love that the guy who wrote the book about it is like, when did he have time to perform CPR?
When was he actually performing CPR on her?
He says that he's actually trained in CPR, so he knows what to do. And yet when paramedics and rangers finally arrive hours later, they see that he placed her body incorrectly. Her head wasn't elevated. And with that kind of injury, you bleed out. The rangers also noticed her lipstick wasn't smeared like it would be if she had been given CPR. It was still pristine.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
The ranger shows up and suddenly Harold zips over and starts performing CPR on his now dead wife.
So he didn't even try.
He didn't even try.
When I was a kid, I thought if I fell asleep where my head was even a centimeter below my feet, the blood was going to rush to my head in the night and I was going to die. So I knew that that was uncomfortable as a child. Mm-hmm. So I feel like anybody would know that.
You have to elevate the injury.
So he's going nuts. He's making all these calls. And I'll tell you this, a lot of times we have fun with the 911 operators.
You think so?
I thought both the 911 ops, they were plugged in and they were like sympathetic.
I got my computer on and I can count so we can make sure we're getting that blood flow.
Every time he was like, I gotta go, my battery, they were like, oh, sir, of course, yes.
Yeah. And if you call back, you'll get me. Do you think that's true? So they can like route it or whatever?
I think so.
Call 911 anytime and you get me, okay?
Because the park is so big. It may have been directly to the ranger station.
Yeah, that's a good point. Anyway, so this is all falling right into his plan. He wants to be found hours later, which is what happened. It's nighttime when they find him, right?
Harold is sort of standing there not doing much of anything. I think he has a fire going.
After Tony fell, Harold was texting and calling everybody, and there was this one text he sent that really creeped me out.
Which one?
He said, Tony fell, my bride is gone.
I got a text at 10:30 on a Sunday night. Tony fell, my bride is gone.
That was not cool. Oh, I didn't like that text.
Don't call your wife of several years your bride like she's an object. Gross.
Like they'd been married for over a decade at that point.
Yeah, they have a daughter. They have a whole life together. Don't call her that.
My bride. Ugh.
So we learned that this was actually his second attempt to kill Tony.
Oh, yeah, because months earlier at one of their cabins that they had.
For some reason, it was like 10:30 p.m. and she was under the porch and a beam fell and knocked her out.
Yeah.
And I can't figure out what she was doing at 10:30 under the porch, but he definitely dropped that beam on her.
They did say what she was doing down there. She's playing solitaire.
Harold was walking across, and as he walked across, a beam came loose and fell directly on the back of her head.
This is the reddest of flags before the actual murder that she needs to get the hell out of there. Like, do you buy for 1 second that this could possibly happen?
No.
Definitely not.
And he kept telling people in the weeks after that she almost died.
No, he didn't say she almost died. He says, I almost killed her.
Harold laughed it off. Did you hear I almost killed Tony?
And then meanwhile, Tony goes to her mom, and her mom says, you got to get out of there. And she agreed.
Almost like she knew?
I think she knew it probably wasn't an accident.
And now Tony had accidentally fallen off a cliff.
Within hours of that death happening, the cops started getting calls saying, hey, you should look into this dude's first wife. Because guess what? Accidental death too.
Yes, the first wife. There was a whole other story to tell there.
Lynn, she, like Tony, wanted to find a Christian man.
Yeah, that was a big deal for her.
Somebody who loved the Lord.
Her best friend introduced her to this guy she knew, which that friend regrets introducing them.
Oh, yeah.
But at the time, she thought they'd be a great match, and they did seem to be a great match. It was still early on, so Harold not really having a career wasn't as much of a red flag. But on their wedding day, Lynn told her friend that Harold is always planning. You move from one plan to another with him. And you know why that is, Kurt?
Why is that?
He's a planner.
Everything is always planned with Harold.
Why do you think he wanted her dead? Because I wonder if she couldn't have kids or something.
Was it not for the money?
Oh, duh. It was so he didn't have to work. Of course. It was for the insurance money that he got.
Right.
So anyway, he's married. It's 95. They are going out on a fancy dinner.
They're driving on kind of a desolate road.
Basically in the middle of nowhere.
He claims that they get a flat tire. So they pull over to the side of the road. She gets out. They're changing the tire, and one of the lug nut rolls under the car, and she goes to retrieve it. And while she's under there, the car slips from the jack and falls and crushes her.
Yeah.
And Harold is lighting flares and putting them in the road, trying to get any passersby to come and help. And someone does stop to help. And a whole team of people help lift it off of her. And she's actually not dead.
Yeah.
The paramedics arrive. She's still alive.
Which shocks Harold.
His reaction is so gross.
He said, really? She has a heartbeat?
He cannot believe that after his murder, she would be alive.
Yeah.
But as they take her away, she's still alive, but then does eventually pass away at the hospital.
Now, wait, I got a whole lot of thoughts about this crime scene and how it went down. I feel like Harold didn't want anybody to stop, or if he did, not someone as nice as the people that did. I feel like these were some genuine good Samaritans.
And they were determined
to save her.
He wouldn't let them touch her.
Yeah, like he's waving them over, and then he's like, don't touch her. What the f***?
They're like, we have to, sir.
Yeah.
She's trapped under this car.
That's when they find out that she was the one changing the tire, which the ranger said.
Women don't usually change tires when a man is around.
Without a jacket, by the way. She's in jeans and a t-shirt, okay? He's got a jacket on. He's nice and cozy. Everybody else, there's like 4 people there. They all take their jackets off to put over this woman's body to keep her warm, and Harold doesn't take his jacket off.
No. It's clear that he was the one who was actually changing the tire and then asked her to go fetch something out of the car strategically so that he could then move the jack and drop the car onto her.
Yeah.
Also, it wasn't the right jack. It was a boat jack.
Yeah. It does not matter. He says happened here, and he has a lot of different things that he changes over the years of how this wife died.
She was changing the tire. He was changing the tire. His story changes.
At one point, he says that it happened because they opened the back of the car.
It hit her on the neck and broke her neck.
Once, while addressing a Sunday school class, he said his first wife had died of cancer.
Obviously, he killed her, but he must have knocked her out and moved her underneath it to drop the car.
You think so?
Because how would she crawl under it? There isn't enough room. Feels like he may have tried to pin her down or something.
Yeah, or I thought maybe he asked her specifically, hey, can you hand me that flashlight? And he was like, oh, it's not going to fall, just do it.
Yeah.
This was back in the day when cops and coroners were 80% lazy. They didn't want to call this a crime. They didn't call it a crime.
They didn't want to do the paperwork.
Exactly. This was ruled an accident. And even though there was a footprint on the side of the car where he kicked it.
There was a photo at the crime scene with a shoe print on the Jeep right around the place you would kick it to force that jack to move.
Yeah.
Like right above the front wheel well.
Yeah. Look, I'll say this. This death happened in 95. Like, as you know, Kate, I'm burning through forensic files. Do you know how many times I've heard people talk about comparing shoe prints to catch somebody? For cases in the 80s, like, they took a picture of the footprint. I'm shocked that this went uninvestigated.
It must be because the setup is so crazy.
Yeah.
That they just couldn't fathom.
Everything was progressing as if this was suspicious, and then all of a sudden the brakes were put on the investigation, it was declared an accident, and forgotten for nearly 20 years.
Okay, so I said Good Samaritans. I'm a little suspicious why they didn't follow up on this. What about you?
Yeah, again, it was his first murdered wife, so the pattern wasn't in place yet.
Yeah, but it was all the weird shit that they said. Like the fact that the jacket, she was changing it. He didn't want him to touch her. Maybe not the first woman that went and got, but I felt like the ranger lady, like she was there as an official. I don't know. I mean, later when they ask him about it, they know.
I don't understand why it took so long.
They like, are you here about 20 years ago when that car fell on that lady? Good.
When you got the call, was it sort of like, I was expecting this call?
I said, is it about that woman that the car fell on her? And he goes, yep. I go, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hate when that happens where they go to somebody and they're like, took you long enough, right? I feel like that happens a lot in true crime.
Absolutely.
So after the coroner finally rules her death an accident, he has her cremated.
Right away.
And then we learn that this clown had both wives cremated, essentially to cover up any traces of foul play. Then he spreads their ashes in the same spot, and he claimed it was both of their favorite place.
And they show both pictures. It's hard to believe they're different times. He's got like the same memorial thing sticking out of the rock.
He did the exact same things from start to finish with both wives.
It's insane. The same smile, the same pose.
I'll bet you that he goes up there and jerks off, or did. That's the scene of the crime for him.
But then who took that picture?
Oh, yeah, good point.
So after Tony's death, Harold sends a Christmas card to friends and family. This card is so whack. It's a picture of Harold and their daughter walking in the snow, holding hands with their backs to the camera.
Hiking in the forest. The inscription? We appreciate your prayer for us as we walk through this difficult time.
It's like, bro, maybe skip the card this year. It's too soon.
And also, they showed the card as big as Merry Christmas was parentheses, photo taken 11/22/12, which was to say, like, this photo was taken before my wife died, I guess.
This photo was taken by Tony herself.
That was on the front of the card. Like, what is this guy thinking?
Crazy.
Harold tried to woo other women on that dating site, even while he was engaged to Tony.
It was during those years he met Sansare Lise Calvar.
Saw all of his red flags.
She was the best.
Like his lack of a real job.
Yep.
And she was like, nah.
Yeah.
He was pretty vague in his career.
I love that right away she's like, oh, and he's a widow, and that's a good thing.
A widower is actually, could be a good find.
Because she's like, at least it means that he was married and lived with someone, so he doesn't have weird tics. And I was like, oh, you should come live in the Kurt cave, lady.
I think maybe it was better than had he been divorced.
A guy in his late 40s might have a lot of weird tics, but a widower, that's nice.
I don't really see why any of that matters. Widowed, divorced, single, who cares?
Well, I guess she's thinking of 45-year-old man's lived alone for a while, right? Like he's not washing his sheets and stuff. I mean, that's what I hear. I don't know. I'm a super clean person. I love that it takes like the smallest of red flags too, that he did not talk about his work enough, where she was like, I'm out of here. I loved it.
Yeah, it's shady.
Yeah.
Speaking of work,
yeah.
He would tell Tony that he would be traveling for work on Thursdays.
Oh!
Really? He was just going to the local Panera Bread and checking his email and around online.
Oh, I can't believe...
Now look, Kurt, I cannot blame him for choosing to surf the information superhighway from Panera. Panera rules, and I too go there like once a week. So I get it.
Do you really?
Absolutely.
I think Panera sucks. I don't like it.
Why?
It's like a cafeteria or something. I'm not into it. But hey, give me that Wi-Fi. I'll take that Wi-Fi.
I like their food. Yeah. Is it gourmet? No. But it's for the price point. It's relatively healthy, good quality. I'm all about it.
And also it was a few miles from his house. Like, what the...
So as the investigation unfolds, we learn more details about the fall, which I'm going to call the push.
Yeah.
A deadly push.
Investigators look into his cell phone records. Harold had actually driven up to the location, the site of the push, 9 times. Presumably to scope it out.
Yeah.
So he knew that it was remote.
Exactly.
And no one could get to them, and that it was the perfect place for a murder. 9 times.
That is some heavy-duty planning right there.
That is some planning.
Something he never told investigators.
So dumb. Of course your cell phone's going to ping out there, bro.
This might have been before people realized that cell phones were pinging.
In 2013? Nah. I disagree.
Really?
I was watching Datelines in 2013.
Yeah, I guess I was too. But again, had Harold seen Dateline before?
Well, obviously not, because I feel like he would have done a few things differently. God, I was hoping he was going to be interviewed on here.
I know.
He wasn't. I want to know how miserable he is in prison. Anyway, we'll get there. So yeah, his cell phone pinged a bunch. Then we find out that 2 months prior to the time where he accidentally killed her, of course he had a bunch of insurance policies.
Yeah, he was able to claim $4.7 million across 4 different policies.
Are you serious?
Insurance is such a scam. How can that many policies be taken out on one person? That shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah, I don't get it. So he's got all these policies where he's the beneficiary, and there's only one policy where he's not. And if Tony had died, the money was going to go to their daughter, Haley. Now, this was a policy made by Tony's parents, not even Harold. But what did Harold do when he found out about this policy?
He made himself the beneficiary and cut Haley out.
Yeah. How's he allowed to do that? It's not his policy.
I don't understand how that works.
Yeah.
It feels like you need the person who took the policy out and the person whose the policy is for to sign off on something like that.
So he has all these policies, and of course, his first thing, his wife's dead. His daughter doesn't have a mother anymore, and what's his concern? He wants to cash these babies in.
Kurt, his bride is gone.
You're right. And he's distraught, and the only thing that's going to make him feel better is $4.7 million. But gosh darn it, the insurance is a little suspicious. They said an investigation was pending, which Tony's brother said was the only time he ever saw Harold cry.
Oh, he was panicking.
Harold's attitude with Tony's family was suspicious from the jump. What'd you think about that?
Oh, right. He was more interested in watching the football game than talking to them about what had happened the day of her death.
Yeah, he's over there under the guise of, I'm here to talk to you. I'm finally going to answer some questions. I'm going to tell you everything that happened. And then he's going, oh, you know what? It'll take 10 minutes. Let's do it during halftime. Oh, if I was a member of that family, I would have walked over to the television and tipped it over and said, we're going to talk about it right now until we're done. Like, in your football, like the nerve of this guy.
Yeah.
Like the second that the cops start to look at him, everything falls apart. They're like, he hasn't had a job since 95. We checked his credit cards. He's not going out of town. He's going 2 miles away and buying bagels and soup or whatever at Panera.
Delicious bagels and soup.
You know, I feel like I've had a soup there that was tasty. I'll give it that.
Was it the autumn squash soup?
No, I would never order anything with squash in it, for one.
Why?
I don't party with squash. You can keep it.
Shout out to Panera Autumn Squash Soup. They sell it at Target, too.
No way! So the cops are really onto this guy. This actually gets people investigating the first wife's murder, which is great. And this is when the old detective, I loved the old guy, the old detective that looked into it. One, he sounded like Kevin's dad from last episode.
Yeah.
But I love what he was like, this guy's all over the map.
This guy was all over the map from the get-go.
He brings up a great point that you said. Nobody asked, show me this broken jack, Harold. Like, where's the car jack that you say is broken?
There's a lot of things that could have been looked at that would be easier to look at then than now.
He's being real polite about it, these bums back in the day. But he's like, well, it was incomplete. No, it was lazy.
All the facts would indicate that this was, I think, a rush to judgment.
And I love that AC said that they reached out to the original coroner, and this motherfucker refused to be on air, but he's going to send in a little note. The first line is, hindsight's a wonderful thing, is what it begins with. You, bro.
Hindsight is a wonderful thing. There were no suspicions raised and no reason to drag our feet.
That is not a good thing for a coroner to say.
So now everything's coming down on old Harold. Everybody's getting suspicious, and the cops want to talk to him about Lynn, the first wife. And of course, he refuses to. So they go to Lynn's friend, the one that set her up with Harold. They go to her and ask her to wear a wire and go talk to Harold. This whole situation was doomed from the jump. They wire her up, and she's like, he's going to hug me and feel the mic pack. And they're like, he can't.
And they said, no, he can't. And I said, he's going to hug me. He does that.
Harold, of course, is hugging every lady he meets, right?
Oh, he's a hugger. But of course, like, if she doesn't hug him, he's gonna know something's up.
And as she demonstrates, she goes...
When he hugged me, I put my hand in front of me to guard the wires.
Like, already the jig is up right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
So they're talking, and then she gets a call. Once she answers it, I wouldn't be looking at my phone if I was wired talking to a killer. I don't know. I feel like I wouldn't be checking my phone. But she picks it up, and it's the cops going, oh, sorry, the wire's disconnected. Go to the bathroom real quick. So she does. They fix it, and then she comes back and asks questions about his dead wife. Like, this thing, it is so obviously she's mic'd up.
And he had also said that he had a feeling his friends would be wired. And she was all, wow, they would do that?
And she's like, I can play the game. And I wanted to go, you can't play it well. Sorry, lady. You're not doing so hot. Because they don't get, of course.
No.
Then what happens?
I mean, they prosecute him. They interviewed several of the jurors from his trial. And I loved that they were not having any of it. They saw right through his bullshit.
Yeah.
They were not charmed. They were like, nah, this Joker is a murderer.
That was awesome.
Guilty. He was guilty. Absolutely guilty. Yes.
It took them like 20 minutes to decide that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, luckily he was found guilty and he went to prison with no chance of parole. And now again, like, Tony's fam, they're all these good Christian people. They don't want him to die. I say, dude, what do you think?
I think life in prison without the possibility of parole is fine.
I'm against the death penalty because there are innocent people that are convicted. So I am anti-death penalty. However, these motherfuckers get used to being in jail, and they're like celebrities, especially if they have a Dateline about them. Like, I'll bet he is remarried, Kate, because some crazy lady saw the Dateline when it first aired and contacted him. I'll bet you money. Can't you see that happening?
Yeah, they're pen pal spouses.
That's what I'm talking about.
And then she gives him money for commissary.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think after a year or two, they really get accustomed.
Well, you know he's in there planning.
Absolutely.
He plans everything for the jail. Everything.
Gonna have a bad time.
Here's what also bugged me is the family said that they wanted him to live because they didn't want to take away Haley's father, too. Do you want Haley to ever talk to her father?
No.
No, not once. Especially not young, because she's going to go in there and he's going to get it in her head that he's wrongfully accused, right? And she's going to buy it. I mean, how many times do we see kids that grew up with their parent in jail and they're the one banging the drum for the innocence, and us, the viewers, are going, no, your parent is a killer. Like, don't talk to him.
Yeah.
Like, he's a psychopath. It just bumps me out. He doesn't deserve to ever talk to her.
It's not like she's in foster care with strangers. She's with her family.
Yeah.
She has a great support system.
Yeah.
Anna Kate included.
People are saying I'm therapeutically helping her through this.
And of course, the episode ends. We talk to Anna Kate again. Get some more precocious in there real quick.
I don't really understand.
All right, well, I think it's time for our checklist. Kate, you want to go first?
So, my murder checklist. Small town. No.
Nope.
Number 2, military. Nope. No one's in the military. And number 3, Florida. No mention of Florida.
No.
Goose egg.
Yeah, goose egg for you. And actually, Kurt's kick-ass list. This is where I count down things in a Dateline ep that when they happen, I yell and go, woohoo! Number one, does anybody talk about how this is like a bad movie? No. They really could have, and I was waiting for one, but it didn't happen. And guess what else I didn't hear? Signs of a struggle.
Signs of a struggle here.
Nobody said it, because it was an outdoor murder scene. Like, that only happens when it's inside.
Yeah.
Does Dateline get a mention? No.
Nothing on our lists got checked off.
Boy, that's wild, too, because this is, one of the best, quote-unquote, Datelines ever, and not one of our 6 things happens.
But they also say at the very beginning of this episode, there's no veil of who did it. You know from the beginning that it's Harold. So this episode, again, I think maybe it's voted as one of the best because it's just a straight down the middle. Look how crazy this guy is.
Yeah. Does this fall in line with like a Dirty John or something like that? Like, could this be a miniseries or something?
Oh, maybe. It could be.
Because again, it's like a woman who genuinely just wants to find love and have a family and like live her life.
And a woman who is a boss bitch on her own.
Absolutely. Because a lot of times, these motherfuckers looking in their financial records, they even said Harold was dating based on he would search their income. Mm-hmm. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm Kurt Money.
And I'm Kateline.
I'm Lester Holt. For all of us, I'm Lester Holt. Good night.